Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Leanna if you're new, and today we're going to be talking about Asian representation in American media again. If you've never seen any of my videos before, I do have a video on Asian representation in American media where I just talk about the Asian representation that I knew of and was exposed to growing up in the 2000s, and really just talking about things that had been on my mind for years and years but had never talked about before, because there's truly not that much conversation in America about Asian Americans at all. So I kind of felt like nobody would care anyway, which sucks ass, and I'm hoping to do what I can as an individual with a YouTube channel to change that. I also did make a video on Mulan 2020, and people seem to enjoy hearing me talk about that, but of course on the flip side I also truly got a taste of what it was like to get a lot of hate for my opinion, which reminded me of why I started this channel with innocent makeup videos that people could not get mad at me for. But you know what? We have already slid down this rabbit hole of me giving opinions on the internet, so let's get down and dirty with this, okay? I've developed a thicker skin, and it's still developing. If you want to leave a hate comment and be disrespectful, you can suck my ass, because even if you disagree with me, you can still be respectful about it. So please, please be nice to me, and I will be nice back. That's all I'm asking. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, I have been requested to talk about the new Disney feature film, Raya and the Last Dragon. Honestly, it kind of blows my mind whenever people ask me to share my opinion on things, or like when they tell me they really liked my Asian representation video, because I'm definitely not the most educated person to be talking about this stuff. Like, I didn't major in Asian American studies or anything like that. I'm just an American woman who is of Asian descent, and I watch a lot of movies and TV shows, and I have thoughts on them. So part of me is like, bruh, do I even have anything good to say? But you asked, so here I am, and here you are, willingly. So this movie just came out last week, and honestly, I didn't even fucking know about it until like a week before I watched it. Like, I genuinely feel like there wasn't that much buzz surrounding this movie, but you know, it absolutely killed it at the box office its opening weekend, which is good. Maybe I'm just the one living under a rock and just like not keeping up with what is happening, but yeah. Let me know if you heard any hype surrounding this movie. Like, was it just me who had no idea? Like, I want to assume that I didn't know about this because American media doesn't give a shit about Asian people, because that is the case with many other things, but also I might just be totally out of the loop, so let me know if you knew. So just a bit of background, this movie introduces Disney's first Southeast Asian princess, Raya. If you don't know, Southeast Asia consists of Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, the Philippines, Malaysia, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, Brunei, and Timor-Leste. Now, Raya is voiced by Marie Tran, who is Vietnamese, so I'm happy they were accurate in casting the main character at the very least. I'm going to talk about her in a bit, but first I wanted to detour a little and touch on Vietnamese American representation in general, and revisit what I talked about in my first Asian representation video about accuracy in casting. So the only other instance of Vietnamese representation that I can think of off the top of my head is the 2017 movie The Foreigner, starring Jackie Chan, or at least it was supposed to be an instance of Vietnamese representation. And I say that because the main character was Vietnamese, but Jackie Chan is obviously Chinese, which was, and still is, kind of problematic, especially considering that that role should have gone to a Vietnamese actor, but they opted for Jackie Chan because he is a famous face, and that would obviously generate a lot more ticket sales and media buzz. It all really just comes down to money, I guess. The thing is, I can't think of a Vietnamese American actor off the top of my head besides Marie Tran, and I only just heard about her because of this movie. I didn't know who she was before. And I think that's because Hollywood doesn't cast a lot of Vietnamese people, and then on the rare occasion that there is an actual Vietnamese character, they're like, oh, there's not a lot of well-known Vietnamese actors, so let's just go with a Chinese actor instead, or God forbid, a white actor. Let's take a second to talk about that real quick. If you don't know, when Hollywood casts a white person to play an Asian character, people call that Yellowface. Yellowface was more prominent in the 1900s, where movies would use makeup to make white people look Asian in order to play Asian characters by pulling their eyes back and making them look more elongated, and it's super cringe to look at pictures of Yellowface in screen caps of these old movies because it just looks so bad. Like, why and how did the makeup artists think that that looked legit? Like, what the fuck? In more recent times, obviously, there haven't been any instances of people pulling their eyes back to do Yellowface in movies, as far as I know anyway, which is good, but Yellowface is still a thing, unfortunately, just less explicit. There have been lots of instances in recent years in which a white actor was cast in a role that should have gone to an Asian actor. Just off the top of my head, I can immediately think of Avatar: The Last Airbender live action, where everybody was white as fuck. And then perhaps most famously, or rather infamously, there's Scarlett Johansson with Ghost in the Shell, which some people like to defend because they're like, oh, the character she was supposed to play was a cyborg anyway, so it didn't matter if she was Asian. And so I'm just like, yeah, whatever. It still doesn't really like sit right with me. But after doing just a little bit of research, I found out that Mamoru Oshii, the director of the original Japanese Ghost in the Shell, actually defended the casting choice of Scarlett Johansson for this American remake for the same reason that I just mentioned, that it doesn't matter because the character is a cyborg. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, if he's not even mad, then like, should we even be mad? Like, is there really anything to be mad about? Because yeah, she is a cyborg, you know? So here comes the spiciest part of this video where I might get in trouble for saying this. But like, I kind of feel like that guy's opinion doesn't really matter because he's not American. Therefore, he doesn't have the first-hand experience of what it's like to be misrepresented in this country. Like, he just doesn't get it. He doesn't get the Asian American experience and why so many people felt it was important to see an Asian actor in that role. That anger and controversy can't just be dismissed like that with a little technicality, you know, like, oh, she was supposed to be a cyborg. People are so quick to shut it down when people get mad about this misrepresentation and whitewashing and Yellowface. People are so quick to get mad at us for being mad. Like, it really makes you wonder, like, what is the real issue here? That aside, though, the argument that Scarlett Johansson's character is a cyborg does make sense, though. But I don't think it's a good reason to have not cast an Asian person. I don't think it's fair to blame her for taking such a high-profile role to advance her career as an actress. I get it, you know? However, before we absolve her from any and all responsibility, we must consider how she handles receiving so much backlash. She did say herself that she believes representation is important, and that she never would have taken the role if she knew that it would be offensive, and that she wanted the role because it's such a powerful feminist role. To me, it looked like she just turned something that she was getting hate for and flipped it into an argument for feminism, which obviously people can't disagree with because, yeah, obviously feminism, you know, it's good. But I'm willing to bet that the only reason she said that was because her publicist or manager told her to say it. And honestly, it just feels a little bit icky to me, like it feels disingenuous. And that feeling was just perpetuated when I found out she accepted the role of a trans man in a movie I believe was called Rug and Tug. And I'm just like, come on, Scarlett, you know better. You know better. And I won't get too much deeper into this, but if you look it up yourself, you will be able to see that she just doesn't seem genuine at all. She doesn't really seem like she gives a fuck. She has this don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness instead attitude. Whenever she gets in hot water, she just relays some carefully written statement by her publicist that will most effectively dismiss the controversy, but if she can get away with it, then she's not going to be sorry, you know? She's just gonna do it. And to be completely honest, I can't even blame her, honestly. Like, why would she give a fuck? She's rich, famous, beautiful, and white, and these problems about representation don't concern her directly. I do think that ScarJo kind of became kind of a scapegoat for all this anger when we should be directing this anger toward the system that allows such rampant rates of misrepresentation to happen. Yeah, I think she should be held accountable for her statements, but at the same time, she did get a lot of hate, like more than necessary, especially considering that it's not just her, you know. For instance, Jeffrey Tambor, Jared Leto, and Felicity Huffman are just some cisgender actors that have won awards for playing trans characters, and they haven't received nearly as much backlash as Johansson has. So she's definitely not the only one. Emma Stone got into some hot water for accepting a role in the 2015 film Aloha, in which she played a half-Chinese, half-Hawaiian character, which is just... God. Thankfully, in the past few years, Asian representation has been getting a little better. I think the release of Crazy Rich Asians really sparked something in Hollywood, and I haven't really seen a white actor get cast in an Asian role lately, as far as I know, and this is the way that it should be. But yeah, circling back to The Foreigner and Jackie Chan, a Chinese man getting cast as a Vietnamese character, I mentioned this in the Asian representation video that I don't think Hollywood is super ready to cast super accurately just yet. And when I say accurately, I mean Chinese people playing Chinese characters and Vietnamese people playing Vietnamese characters, and etc. Hollywood is on their way, maybe taking a bunch of detours, but you know, they're on their way. Honestly, for now, I'm satisfied when a character that's supposed to be Asian is Asian. But of course, being Chinese, I do recognize my privilege when I say that. Of course, I'm satisfied. Literally 90% of Asian American representation is Chinese representation. I'm not saying that Jackie Chan getting cast as a Vietnamese man was right, but you know, at least he was Asian. You know? I think for now, that's really all that Hollywood can do. The important thing is that they're on their way. They're on their way. Thankfully, specifically for Southeast Asian representation, I have seen some Filipino and Malaysian actors come up lately. Manny Jacinto and Henry Golding, just to name a couple, so that's really exciting too. It feels like things are happening, you know? So, Raya and The Last Dragon. The whole reason I went on a long-winded spiel about Asian representation and casting accuracy was because I thought it was relevant. This movie is supposed to represent Southeast Asian culture. Kelly Marie Tran is Southeast Asian, which is good, but the rest of the cast is primarily East Asian. There was a bit of controversy about this. You know how I feel about this already. I'm just happy everybody was Asian except for the fucking armadillo, but I guess that doesn't really matter. Once again, Chinese girl here. I am not Southeast Asian, so I guess part of me feels like my opinion is not the opinion that matters the most. Obviously, I'll let the Southeast Asian American community decide if this movie was a win for them, but in my opinion, this movie is really great for Asian representation in American media as a whole. I'm really happy about this expansion of Asian representation in American media because, as I've said before, Asian American representation tends to be very East Asian focused and more specifically very Chinese focused, and I think that should change. I definitely think that this focus on East Asianness is a result of colorism because East Asians are some of the palest Asians and therefore considered to have the closest proximity to whiteness, which is so dumb because the only reason we're pale is because East Asia is further away from the equator. Like, the closer you are to the center of the earth, the darker you are because you need more melanin to not get skin cancer because that's where the sun is the most concentrated. Like, colorism is just so fucking stupid, but you know, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, now that I brought that up, all that this perceived proximity to whiteness has done for East Asians is pit us against other people of color in this fucked up country, and I am so not here for it. We're not white enough to be considered the same as white people, and we're too close to whiteness for other people of color to see us as people of color. This is kind of getting a little heavy, especially considering that my idea for this video started as a lighthearted movie review, but I feel like I need to talk about this, especially considering current events that are going on, which I will get into later. And to preface that, I wanted to bring up the model minority myth, which, if you didn't know, according to Wikipedia, a model minority is a minority demographic whose members are perceived to achieve a higher degree of socioeconomic success than the population average, thus serving as a reference group to outgroups. So basically, a bunch of white people in the 1900s were like, ooh, look at those East Asians. The stats say they're successful here. So that means there are no race-related barriers, there is no racism, and the system is just fine. And all this has done is driven a wedge between East Asian Americans and other people of color because it's like we're white and therefore have white privilege, which we so obviously do not. And I know this firsthand based on the times I've experienced racism in my own life. And since we're talking about racism, it would be neglectful of me to not mention all the hate crimes that have been happening to the Asian American community as of late. According to NYPD data, hate crimes against Asian Americans have increased by 1,900%. 1,900%. Ever since the start of the COVID pandemic, because people blame Asians for COVID. That's fucking ridiculous. Was it because of Donald Trump calling COVID Kung Flu? Maybe it was when he called it the Chinese virus? Honestly, racism against Asian Americans has always been here. It's just getting more coverage now. The crappy thing is there are still a lot of people who don't know what's happening because mainstream media is so bad at covering anything about Asian Americans. I've mentioned these hate crimes already in a previous video, so I won't get too in-depth here, but if you don't know what's going on, I implore you to do research and educate yourself on what's going on right now because it's really relevant. I truly believe mainstream media doesn't give a shit about us. The bottom line is, a lot of people still don't think that Asians belong here in America. It was honestly so shocking to see how easily so many people came to be convinced that all Asians in the entire world are responsible for COVID. Blows my mind how stupid people are. I've ranted about this in several videos. We are still seen as foreign, oriental, exotic. We don't get to be American, do we? There are so many people who don't see us as American. This is why I think Asian representation is so important. It's not because I'm a little weakling and I need to see somebody who looks like me on TV in order to feel like special or whatnot. Like, literally my favorite show is Friends and that's like the whitest shit ever. I don't care. I still see myself in the characters even if we're not the same race. Asian representation is important because there are literally some people out there in this country who have never seen an Asian person in their lives, and the only exposure they get to the outside world is television and movies because God forbid they turn on the news and educate themselves. And I guess even if they do turn on the news, they won't see much of us anyway because mainstream media doesn't care about us, which just furthers my point. If these people never see any Asian American people in American movies and TV and even news, then how are they supposed to know that we're literally as American as they are, and that if we speak perfect English, it's not by some fucking miracle, it's literally because we were born here. Oh my god. I genuinely think that stopping Asian hate starts with media representation and showing people that, hey, we're American too. We belong here. Because even though that seems basic and obvious, a lot of people don't know that. And that's why these hate crimes are happening. That's why Asian Americans constantly have to deal with racial slurs and racial encounters and also so many fucking microaggressions. So fuck, man. Hollywood has a huge responsibility when you think about it that way. Of course, I don't think ending Asian hate can be achieved solely with media representation. There's a lot to do, and I'll be honest, I don't know all the answers as to how that can be done, but I really think representation is a great way to start. So all that being said, I would like to talk a little bit about Kelly Marie Tran. You may know Kelly Marie Tran from Star Wars. I haven't seen Star Wars and I'm not a fan of the movies, so I had no idea who she was, but there is apparently a bit to unpack here. She was in the 2017 film The Last Jedi. Now, I haven't seen the film, so my understanding of this situation is very limited, but based on the very limited bit that I know, her character was apparently somebody's love interest and the writing wasn't very good and people hated it. They hated it so much that they started hating her, the actress, for it. Stupid, right? And apparently the hate started even before the movie came out. Tran herself said that she had been receiving, quote, really acidic, misogynistic, racist comments, end quote, regarding her role as Rose Tico as soon as the casting was announced. And in December of 2017, Rose Tico's entry on Wikipedia, which apparently is an online encyclopedia about the Star Wars universe, was edited to include racist and vulgar things which actually drew national media attention. The bullying got so bad that she had to delete all her social media accounts, and in the next Star Wars movie, she was basically just written out. I had no idea about all of this, but fuck, man, I can hardly even imagine the pain that she went through, and she didn't even do anything wrong. This is really upsetting to learn about. People can be so fucking vile. I'm glad that she was able to book this role as Raya, and based on the movie's success thus far, it's a good thing for her career, so I'm glad. So now we're actually going to talk about the movie. Oh man, I feel like I keep going on tangents, but they're necessary tangents. First of all, really gorgeous movie. So beautiful, so visually appealing. I'd watch it just to behold its beauty. So there's that. The only thing I would say is that the dragons looked a little weird. They kind of looked like a combination of like Eastern and Western dragons. My thoughts on the dragons are like pretty much in line with what I thought about the little colorful blobs living with Chang'e in Over the Moon. Basically, they look weird, but at the same time I get that it's for kids and it doesn't really matter that much. So yeah, that's like really my only hang-up about this movie. Other than that, I really did like this movie. It was good. I'll say that right off the bat, so there's no anticipation. Go watch it if you're on the fence. It's good. I won't give away any spoilers, so you can stay and watch this video even if you haven't seen the movie. So Raya, our main character, is a Disney princess. It was explicitly stated in the movie, so there's no debate there. You may or may not be aware that Mulan is technically not considered a Disney princess, but she was a big part of my childhood, and she was always a princess to me, and she's considered to be an honorary princess anyway. And to be honest, I always found the is Mulan a princess debate kind of tiresome because it really doesn't matter that much. You know, she's influential, she's strong, she's badass, you know, she's cool, she's beautiful, and a great role model for young girls, so, you know, why not? Why not? It really doesn't matter if she's a princess or not. But it's still undeniable that there is a little something something that comes with being an official Disney princess. When I was little, all I wanted to be was a princess, and a lot of little girls feel the same way, and it just feels nice to be included in this sacred Disney princess pantheon, because let's be honest, it's a fucking pantheon, like Disney princesses. It just feels nice to be included, okay? Honestly, I feel relieved that it was very clearly stated that Raya was a princess, because the debate on these technicalities is kind of annoying, so I'm glad that there won't be a debate, because, you know, she is a princess, so there's that. There was some hesitation about making her a princess, though, which I thought was interesting. Producer Osnat Shore said that, quote, just because she's a female hero in a Disney animated movie doesn't mean she has to be a princess. We thought about that quite a lot, and the reason we landed on having her be a princess, or daughter of a chief who would be a leader, is leadership, is responsibility. The context for it was, as leader, who are you? In a world that is divided and has big issues, kind of like our world today, how do you hold yourself and what do you hold important? She's a great fighter. As a leader, she's a great warrior. And that's cool. But in the end, it's not the warrior aspect of her that wins the day. And I think that's pretty fucking rad. One thing I noticed was that Raya as a character was kind of hardened. She was a serious warrior, but also that wasn't just it. You know, that's literally what Mulan 2020 was, with no personality at all. Like, she was just a fighter, just a warrior. But Raya had life, which I really appreciated. This movie had themes of unity and trust and redemption, which are all pretty deep themes, especially for a Disney movie. I really liked that. I watched it with my sister, and she said that it was probably too much for kids to understand, and that might be true, but I really appreciated that this was a movie that adults could enjoy as well, just because it had those deeper themes in it. And I also really think that those themes are super relevant to our current world. So I think the timing was perfect, really, for this movie. And I think those are some really great themes to teach kids about, especially in today's climate. I also really appreciated that there were these little references to Asian culture in the movie, such as the question, "Have you eaten yet?" It's a very Asian thing. It's basically how you say, "How are you?" I also remember seeing the characters take off their shoes before entering a room. Little things like that get me so excited, and I just feel like so seen, you know, so seen as an Asian person. So this movie basically just follows a hero's journey template, which can be a little overdone, you know, but they made it really good, and not too predictable either. Something that I felt was that Raya reminded me a little of Moana, and the movies are kind of similar too. I loved Moana, but man oh man, it was really predictable. In both these movies, our main characters go through similar struggles. They both have duty to their people, they lost their parents, and subsequently went on this long adventure to find some divine being to help get them back. And although there are struggles on the way, they persevere. So, you know, if you liked Moana, there's a good chance you might like this one. So, personally, I think Raya as a character looks a lot like Jamie Chung. That's pretty much it. There's not really much else to deep dive into here. I just wanted to say that. Let me know if you see it too. But, you know, now that we're on the topic of these characters looking like people, Awkwafina and Daniel Dae Kim were both in this movie, and I'll talk about Awkwafina in a bit, but one thing that the animators did, which I thought was really cool, was made the characters look like the actors. At least I really noticed Awkwafina's character looked so much like her. It was actually really entertaining. But yeah, so Awkwafina was in this movie, and I feel like she's been doing really well for herself as of late. As far as I know, there was Ocean's 8, Crazy Rich Asians, The Farewell, Nora from Queens, and I'm so excited for her. I really like her music. Testify is my favorite song. In spite of all that, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention and acknowledge some of the controversy surrounding her. What I'm referring to is her usage of AAVE, African American Vernacular English, also known as a black accent, and that many people believe that she has culturally appropriated black culture and used it to advance her career, especially in the beginning of it when she was making a lot of rap songs. And ever since she has become incredibly successful and become an A-list celebrity, people have noticed that her black accent has just magically disappeared. And it turns out it's actually pretty common for non-black celebrities to use black aesthetics for their own gain and then drop it once they've reached peak success. So it's definitely not just her, and that sucks that this is happening. It's really, really cringe to think about people doing that. I think it's really important to hold people accountable for what they do, and if we're going to have a conversation about racism and what's wrong with America, we obviously can't neglect things like this and the experiences of the black community. There are a lot of conversations that need to be had and a lot of things that need to be changed, and what we can do as individuals is try to educate ourselves by doing some reading and watching videos and documentaries. I know there are so many things out there that I just don't know and still have to learn. Nobody's perfect, and we're all growing day by day, and it's okay to not know everything. We just have to try our best, educate ourselves, and acknowledge problems when we see them. So with that being said, that is the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!